Good morning, everybody. It still is morning. I'm Nesbitt, and I'm from IBM, and I'm the General Manager for East Africa. And it's really a pleasure to be here with everybody to talk about what we're doing with ICT skills in higher education in Africa and what can be done about it to really take it up to the next level. I'm reminded as we start by a few comments or a few points. One was, I remember when I was back in my graduate school days, I looked on the desk and it said, education is what's left after everything else has been forgotten. So we're going to talk about education. The other thing I learned as I finished my master's in electrical engineering was that the half-life of an engineering degree is about 5 years. And being an engineer, I understood what that meant, and I probably understand what it means today, about how much I know about engineering many years later. So the question that we're going to be talking about today is what we are doing to develop ICT skills in Africa. And it's not just about taking a bunch of computer classes and therefore suddenly things are going to erupt, but how do we create lasting, meaningful change on the continent? Last week I spent the week at Stanford University, and I looked at that small area, maybe 20, 15 miles wide, maybe 40 miles long. How did that become a hub of innovation? How does Dubai become a hub of innovation if it doesn't have oil? It doesn't even have its own working here. So what we really want to talk about is, why are we doing this? Why are we even interested in ICT? And maybe I could start off with, who will I start off with? Ravi. Talk to us about Botswana. What is happening in Botswana? What are you doing? How are you promoting the adoption of ICT and why?
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Botswana, as you very well know, a country with just a 2 million population down there. When it comes down to ICT, there's a lot of investment by the government which is currently happening. They have now looked into the prospects of trying to get into ICT as an engine down to improve the quality of education in the country. Our interaction basically comes down in the higher education sector. The challenge is the whole country, though it has a fiber network. I heard from the morning presentation, it's a generic challenge which is there across Africa of the last mile. So the last mile connectivity is one big challenge which is still there in Botswana. But they have now taken it up head on. They have now formed a particular organization called BOFINET, giving them certain targets and structures in order to make sure that the last mile is now being addressed. So that biggest challenge which is there to connect ICT with the people is now being taken on. First, initially it has been brought down in order to do it in the cities, and subsequently to take it down to the rural areas.
Okay, thank you. So if we think about the model for people to learn ICT, what's very important is infrastructure. So we started with the infrastructure question. Perhaps Professor Waema, you can talk a little about Kenet and what is happening and what the impact has been of connecting the universities to a national backbone and to each other.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. Kenet is Kenya Educational Network. We are the National Research and Education Network. We connect over 70 universities and research institutes in Kenya to the internet and to each other.
Right, inside here? Okay.
And with over 150 campuses across the whole country. We are currently in more than 30 counties out of the 47 counties. Our biggest challenge has been the last mile connectivity for the universities that are there, which are far off from the infrastructure, from the national fiber infrastructure. That has been a challenge. in the rural areas, it's very expensive to create infrastructure in those areas. So that is what we have done.
Okay, thank you. And in Senegal, Seydina, am I pronouncing correctly?
Seydina.
We didn't get the benefit of having a brief around what you're doing in Senegal, but perhaps the last question on infrastructure, perhaps you can talk about what the government's policy is around infrastructure for ICT.
Merci. Donc, au Sénégal, en fait, ça a commencé avec...
In Senegal, it started
on a eu en 2013...
in 2012-13. We had a national dialogue, and the president of the country took certain decisions, especially to strengthen higher learning. In this case, we have a certain number of things that were put in place, especially strengthening capacity building of the universities with regard to all the national network. We have the research centers that connects to all the universities in the country. We put in place a network, which is a national network, and on this we have private operators, and this allows to connect all the institutions in Senegal, be they private or public. And over and above that, we have a virtual university in Senegal, which allows distance learning for people doing undergraduate courses. And this allows to fill in the gap that we are facing because we cannot have all the students in the universities. Thank you.
So we can see that government policy is pretty consistent in terms of let's connect as much of the country as we can. Right? If we now talk about what's happening in other parts, maybe going more towards southern Africa, into Namibia, the country has invested heavily in university research, in science, and technologies. Dr. Van Kent, perhaps you can talk a little bit about that and what is behind that thinking in terms of the investments that you're making.
Thank you, Chair. In the case of Namibia, what we have done is we have...
Can you all hear?
In the case of Namibia, what we did was we set up a national commission for research, science, and technology, and the commission hosts a research and innovation fund. As a policy position, we, as a government, we have decided to increase investment in R&D and innovation to at least 1% of GDP. At this stage, we are at 0.3. The idea is to stimulate research and to build capacity around innovation. We are partnering with a number of countries, South Africa, Finland. We have a program that is called the Southern Africa Innovation Support Program. Through this program, 4 countries in the SADC region participated in this program. Capacities in terms of policies, innovation policies, having a common understanding of what innovation is about has been built, as well as institutional networks in addressing common challenges, which is supported through our research funding that is hosted by our National Commission, has been put in place. The idea of becoming industrialized or to move away from resource-based economies is the key challenge due to the limited capacity in creating employment and to address challenges of youth unemployment.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Professor Lwakabamba, welcome.
Thank you.
You and I had the pleasure of signing an MOU a couple of years ago in Kigali. One of the interesting things that we all need to think about on the continent is that the point, perhaps, that Dr. Van Kent just raised about partnerships with foreign countries and other agencies. Can you talk about Rwanda's policies around engagement with international universities, international research institutions? You're in a university yourself, and this participating in a global education ecosystem.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry I came in late, but I'm like a lot of things were said about Rwanda in the first panel, so maybe it will be boring to repeat them. In terms of partnership, Rwanda has been doing quite a lot of things. Genocide in 1994 killed a lot of people, and especially in the area of the few people are done in the area of science and technology. So when they realized that the economy, in order to move, one, we need people, numbers in higher education. We need quality trained people with relevant skills. We need people in the STEM area, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So what they did quite a number of things. First of all, they expanded the higher education sector in Rwanda. And then they brought in quite a number of institutions. For example, quite a number of institutions have come into Rwanda from different areas. Carnegie Mellon is the famous one, which is really started in Rwanda. The Institute for Mathematics, training is also headquartered in Rwanda, and they train people from all over Africa and outside. Institute for Theoretical, Center for Theoretical Physics, based in Trieste. The Center for Africa is based in Rwanda. So these bring in quite a lot of partnership with a lot of institutions. At the same time, because we realized that we don't have enough numbers, as I said, enough quality, we tried to send our students outside. Initially, after the war and genocide, we sent quite a massive numbers to South Africa, to India, to train quite a number of these people in partnership with quite a number of institutions. And then the presidential scholarship scheme also started by sending people to countries like Germany, to US. And so there was a lot of partnership with a lot of institutions and a lot of universities. And obviously this has paid off that quite a number of these graduates have come back, not only at bachelor's level, but at master's and PhD level. They assist to enrich our own institutions, local institutions, to train better quality students and in bigger numbers. So this is the partnership which we are working on, and it has continued. Obviously, we need a lot of resources.
Yes.
And sometimes we could not manage to do that. But with the help of, when we get bright students, there's, for example, an institution called Bridge to Rwanda, an American NGO, which takes bright students and train them for 1 year how to do things like TOEFL, SAT, and then they attempt and they do exams for the best universities in quite a number of these institutions, like in the US, the Harvards, the Caltech, and so on and so forth. And they take them. And so this makes also helps. When you don't have resources, you have to find another way of doing it so that you can get scholarship for your own bright students.
Very good, very good. Professor Waema, we hear in Kenya about Rwanda claiming its spot as the ICT hub for this part of the world. We hear in Kenya the same thing. We just heard about Rwanda talking more about global international cooperation and the movement of skills in and out. In Kenya, what are we doing? What's happening in Kenya in that same domain as we claim it? Are we claiming ICT superiority because of M-Pesa? Are we claiming it because of what we're doing in the education system? what's the future?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think there's no problem in having several centers. We can claim to be leading in the area of human resource development. We can also claim to be doing very well in the area of penetration of broadband. Our country is a large country. It's not as small as Rwanda. I know quite a bit about Rwanda because I'm in the board of the Kaniji Melon, so I know quite a bit about what is happening in Rwanda. But we all claim to be leading in one way or the other. And for me, that is not a problem. I think we should look for mechanisms of collaborating where we have weaknesses. I know Rwanda looks into Kenya for human resource issues. I think they have done very well in terms of creating broadband infrastructure throughout the country. It's very easy to cover the country, much more difficult to cover some of our remote areas. But I think our edge is in human resource development, largely. Yeah.
Okay. In Francophone Africa, we hear a lot of good things about Senegal and what you're doing. I think the proof of the pudding comes in the results. Can you talk about what the business sector in Senegal, perhaps the business community around Senegal, or even back in Europe, are saying about the quality of graduates in the ICT sector coming out of Senegal? And are they hiring them? Are they interested in working with them? What is happening?
Ok, merci. Donc, au Sénégal...
in Senegal, the private sector is more and more involved now in the development of curriculum, and we created a program that is helping, at the master's level, that is facilitating the working with the private sector, private companies in the training programs. And for the last 2 years with the Centers of Excellence, which in maths, and that is financed by the World Bank, and that brings together all the universities from Senegal to work in the sector. So with these Centers of Excellence, we have worked with the private sector to define the curriculum at the master's level, and these are the programs that are shared amongst all the universities. At the international level, we have the arrival of big organizations, big companies, tech companies, ICT companies like Atos that has just come to Senegal, and which is currently taking students that are coming out of the local universities. And these students are often sent in France or other countries in projects, the Atos project. So this shows that the students that are coming out of the universities are actually, most of the time, operational, or they're active in the workplace in the Francophone, world. And we have the president's direction or directive that required that ICT is, a common course in the ICT in all the courses, scientific or arts, and there is a strengthening of teaching of English to help to the students to be able to follow the master's or to do the master's course in English. So we're actually working at the master's level, but we want to have a more specialized master's course that will be responding to the needs of the sector. Thank you, Dr. Van Kent.
Monsieur le Docteur, we heard in Senegal that it's a holistic approach, really, from start to finish. I thought it was very interesting to hear about your Tech Nai program?
Yes.
Would you mind talking a little bit about that and what kind of results you've seen from the investments that have been made?
Okay. The TECNA program is, we have a policy that we have introduced a couple of years ago. The policy deals with ICT in education. TECNA program focuses more on the general education system. The objective, it's actually an implementation strategy for the policy. The focus there was to provide the inputs like the devices to the various schools. We partner with also, besides government investment, we partner with multilateral organizations, we partner with other countries in assisting. World Bank was also involved, the MCA was also involved in deploying equipment to various schools. On top of that, we have set up some structures for national steering committees that will look into content development and issues of training teachers in the use of or the integration of ICTs in education. We have reached at least more than 50% of the schools with this initiative. We have trained most of the senior secondary teachers in our schools. Our system is quite small. As my colleague from Botswana was saying, we are talking about 2 million people, and we're talking about 1,500 secondary schools, so we could achieve that easily to provide the facilities as well as internet connectivity. We have set up, cooperating with our telecoms, mobile and fixed systems. We have set up an organization that look into connectivity, and all schools and critical facilities like health services facilities get connectivity at a much more reasonable rates, not at commercial rates. And this has actually assisted us a lot. We have a youth training program that we put in place for training unemployed youth in basic maintenance skills for schools. And there's a center that we have set up that works with the schools. It's like a dial-in service where schools will, if they experience problems, will call into this service, this center. And this center has trained these unemployed youth, and they are deployed to various schools, at least 2 per school, so that they can do the groundwork at the particular schools. So that's more or less in terms of the schools and what we have achieved. Maybe the landing of the VAX has also helped a lot in terms of bandwidth, and we are looking into satellite communication also. We have developed programs at our institutions of higher learning to look at both the engineering component as well as the usage of satellite technologies. So we have introduced that program at our National University of Science and Technology.
Okay, very good, very good. Professor Ravi, Bill Clinton once said that the great lie that everybody tells students is go to school, work really hard, get good grades, go out and get a good job. And that's what people tell me. And what we know, especially about life in Africa, is getting those good jobs is very difficult. I'm not sure exactly what it's like in Botswana. Maybe it's a very lucky country, but I imagine there are many people who are not employed. How are you preparing younger people to be self-sufficient, perhaps more even self-employed, as opposed to being made ready for a job?
The biggest challenge which the higher education sector nowadays has is to get the student job ready. The days are gone when higher education institution has been looked into as only knowledge providers. Now we have been looked into as people who produce the force which is required down for the industry to use. In Botswana, particularly down in the institution where I come from, we have a lot of interaction which we do down with the industry. It starts from a very basic level of even when we start preparing the content or the programs what we are working on. So we liaise with the industry. We have an industry reference forum which partakes down in the preparation of curriculum. So that way, the product which has now been designed is now based on the industry requirements, is what we do. Apart from that, we also make sure that the programs, all programs, irrespective of the discipline, what they are in, what we have, has a 6 months internship. So that means there is always a liaising which happens with the industry for the student, and that should not, it's for a considerable period of time, because 6 months certainly gives the industry an opportunity to look into the skills of the individual when they come in. So that also gives the student an opportunity at least to have interaction with one employer whom they will be able to interact with when they finish the graduation. At least they can go and tap back to look into it. The biggest challenge in Botswana is we are very much dependent on the government, including the private sector. The private sector also depends on the government to drive its business and work on. So in order to create an alternative thing where the dependency on the government is reduced, one thing what we do is we have an entrepreneurship module which has been put into every curriculum, whatever is being taught, so that that skill level or the basic skills is also taught to the student, so that he need not have to depend on the government or an employer. So if he has got the right skills and if he feels the market is acceptable of it, he himself can become an employer of his own choice. So these are the certain interventions which we do. Apart from that, we are also trying to work on trying to create industries in Botswana which are not there, which are perhaps there in the global market. We recently sent around 12 of our graduates down to India for them to get into industries which are currently not being in Botswana, made them work there for a year so that they can come back and use their entrepreneurial skills, what they have got trained, and perhaps start those industries. In fact, very happy down to say out of the 10 whom we had sent, at least 3 of them were able to come and start their own startup firms in order to do it. Apart from that, organizations like us also have what we call an Entrepreneurship Lab. So once if a student has finished, he has provided the skills, but he needs some mentoring to be done. So we also allow the student to use the entrepreneurial lab till he is able to set up his own business. So these are certain interventions what we are doing, but it's challenging. I will not say that it is something very rosy the moment the student goes out, but these are interventions which we help over a period of time will be able to alleviate that particular challenge.
Yeah. Professor, in Rwanda, as you drive around, few things strike one. First, it's very orderly. Second, lots of young people and quite entrepreneurial. Same question to you. Can you talk about what Rwanda is doing to promote more entrepreneurship, more orderly, more innovation around work, as opposed to relying on large manufacturing or large international companies coming to hire people or large local companies? What are you doing to promote entrepreneurship, especially around ICT?
Yeah, thank you so much. There are a number of things. One of them is that we do realize that although we're expanding the higher education sector, we didn't have a lot of skills, middle-level skills. And so the government put in a lot of resources with the help of partners and with their own government resources in developing the TVET sector, technical and vocational training. And they did put, this has expanded. And obviously, in the past, there was the thinking that only graduates, degree graduates, can qualify to get jobs, and they are the most, respected ones. But later on, when the government started campaigning, and people realized that when you come out of the university, you don't get jobs so easily. But if you have certain skills at the TVET level, technical level, you can get jobs quite easily. So thinking started changing. So people come from secondary schools, and they go to the TVET, institutions, they come out with skills, they get employed. Then the graduates also realize that actually, if they invest, and even after graduating, they can go to TVET schools and get some skills, they can come out and get employed or start their own jobs. So that was number one. Number two was that we partnered with some international body to try and find out really the students when they are young were did a pilot project in Rwanda with an organization from the United States, which has been doing it for 80 years. What we did was to start a pilot project whereby they go to schools and really try to find out what skills are the students interested in eventually, what are their work habits, and what type of courses are required for that type of skills. And then when they choose those courses, a number of things happen. Because when you know that's what you're coming out, you get interested and pass quite well. And in actual fact, the transition rate is faster, the pass rate is faster, and then they go on to higher. And then you link them up to either to employment which is available in Rwanda or outside, but at the same time, if they're interested in entrepreneurial skills, you start training that way. So this is something which we are trying. Hopefully this is an early stage, and we hope that will make a lot of difference for graduates. Otherwise, graduates come out, and
right.
Quite a lot of them are totally unemployed.
Yeah, yeah. Many years ago when I lived in the States, 20-something years ago, I was at a particular graduate school there, and one of our famous alumni who started Sun Microsystems came and complained to the university that all the students graduating from this college were completely unemployable, they'll never amount to anything, and they're not right for the workplace. And I think that's a challenge that we'll constantly face. And I think it's almost impossible, actually, to give credit to universities and give credit to businesses to actually have people come out who are perfect for you. They need to be modified. But we need to continue along the path that we're going right now. It seems as if everybody in all of your countries has the right policies. You're focusing on the infrastructure, getting it everywhere. You're focusing on the right curriculum. You're focusing on ensuring it's holistic from young to people who are shaving, all the way through. And it seems like, we didn't hear from everybody, but it seems like there's an investment in the entrepreneurial side, which is really what it's going to be all about. So as we close here, ICT is not an end to it itself, it's a means. It's always been around as a form of improvement in productivity. As we close, we'll start at the end and come this way. I give you a magic wand, a magic baton, 2 things that you would do that perhaps we haven't covered today to take the level of ICT adoption and utilization to the next level in your respective countries. Perhaps we can start at starting west, from the west.
The first thing in Senegal that we put in place to have this ownership of ICT is the virtual university and digital spaces, open spaces. These are places where we have in all the departments, so in the government, where people have a server, a computer, and in the conference rooms, really. And this is where people can work together and use, this ICT. And the goal is to bring technology to the places where most people come to, so including, rooms in schools where the students are able to access the virtual university. And this, regardless of where these people are, they can access internet and all the services that can be accessed through this. So this is also supported. This also supports the young people and the groups of women, for example, to undertake their activities, economic activities. And this then helps them improve how they do their work and business. So secondly, the program for or the students getting a computer. This was created 3 years ago. This allows all the students to have access to a computer, and this has enabled us to demystify, the use of, ICT in all the activities. Could be economic activities, could be social activities, or in learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Your magic wand.
2.
2.
One, I would say, we need design thinking. Introduce a compulsory design thinking course in our undergraduate programs, master's, PhD programs. In our university, University of Nairobi, we are thinking of mounting such a course and making it compulsory for students, together with some aspects of technology transfer, particularly for postgraduate students, masters, and PhD students. The second thing that I would recommend is the problems that we are solving in society have different dimensions. ICT is too narrow. So I'm recommending that we should have programs or create programs that are multidisciplinary, where we bring in people from ICT, we bring people from the humanities, people from the built environment, people from other areas, even design, very critical. So that we expand our ICT programs, so that the people we create are people with who have different perspectives and can be able to solve the typical problems that we have in society.
Very good. Thank you. Moussa?
Yeah. For me, my experience has shown me that very important is the provision of proper infrastructure and the provision of affordable broadband. This is very critical. Issues of devices, I think is very important. Affordable devices. Issues then of getting resources for training of teachers, and also training of the students themselves, and providing the content. So all the 3 of those, I think, they are very critical. Otherwise, you are losing. Thank you so much.
So in our experience, what we've done is, number one is the devices. We have provided devices to all the students.
So this is your wish list. What
we have already done it,
Yeah.
and this has now created for us to put all our content on the cloud, on a separate learning platform. So now we are teaching beyond the classrooms. So, and it is beyond the hours of your normal teaching hours. Though it's campus learning, it's even off campus it can be done. We use a blackboard learning environment. So the contents are put in down there. Currently we are at 25%, but we would like that to be more and take it across. And we are also now trying to get into blended and distance learning. Okay, so it's not only teaching ICT, but using ICT to teach all other structures in higher education is what we are trying to achieve in. And what has ICT also helped us to achieve is cut down a lot of our cost. Initial infrastructure costs are high, but now we have multiple campuses, like what I saw in one of the presentations now. Travel costs have been cut down to a great extent. We'll be able to communicate through all those things using ICT. And our wish list going forward is to make sure that we cut down as much as possible, perhaps put our infrastructure in one centralized place, get the best of the teachers in one centralized place, but then use that resources in order to teach right across the continent.
Good. Maybe?
Thank you. In our case, after providing access, it is critical for us to create more co-creation kind of platforms for youth to come together and try and solve problems. The second one that I think of is in terms of enhancing employability. what we have done in Namibia is we have put up a training levy, to use a levy like that to have more apprenticeship programs being introduced. So that will be my second one.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Your wishes are all granted. So, on behalf of the organizers, John and everyone, as IBM, I thank you all, the audience, for patiently sitting through the session, and for the panelists for all of your very insightful comments. So I think in the last few minutes here, it's about putting in affordable infrastructure, getting content on it, making the space available so you can have virtual universities, enabling people to communicate across the world, not just about ICT or across Africa, not just about ICT, but use ICT to create what their future is going to look like. And very importantly, Professor, design thinking. And that's a core fundamental piece of the go-to-market strategy for IBM. So we'll happily lead you through some design thinking sessions and have you lead us through some as well. So with that, I'm supposed to say one word. But first, let me just say, IBM really appreciates this. We're very involved in our university programs. We have an African university program. We've trained hundreds, if not thousands, of students, hundreds of professors in cloud, analytics, cybersecurity, mobile phone applications. We're doing a lot of work with the University of Nairobi, and our team looks forward to working with you in all parts of Africa. So with that, the one word I have to say is video.
I had a successful career joining teams of great scientists in pushing boundaries.
I had already started a technology consulting job and I was doing well, but I felt it was not as fulfilling as directly seeing a change happen in someone's life.
It's very important to mentor and to foster innovation.
I slowly came to realize that I had a gift. I loved sharing knowledge.
I'm a professor of computer science.
So I teach undergraduate course in computer science.
There are many teachers who have the sense of responsibility, helping the next generation to grow and to acquire some relevant skills.
It's a choice someone has to make. So the Africa Skills Initiative is about IBM providing free access to cutting-edge technology that is out there, that is in use by businesses and organizations.
So there are three things involved. 1, teaching materials. 2, the technology. And 3, training academic staff.
It's all about getting the students skilled up. And of course, industry stands to benefit from having skilled people leaving the university.
Generally, there is a gap between what employers need and what people learn in the universities.
Students are able to have a cloud environment for them to launch their apps. They can test the concepts that they're learning with a real environment.
For students to be able to grab the technology, it means a lot to them.
Give me something to play with my hands. Show me what you're saying, what it means.
You have access to technologies that organizations like Facebook use to keep their data. It's fantastic.
Opportunities like this already come along. There are a lot of things you have to learn. So when it comes to actually using them in the real world, you find a totally different scenario.
You as well can develop systems that will take data and even integrate data from other external sources.
I think people come alive when they do something that they enjoy.
If you want to, you can imagine flying when someone else is crawling.
This generation will have to think very creatively in terms of creating for themselves a space for employment. As much as that is a challenge, there's also a big opportunity now because technology is so pervasive. It's all about people who have actionable skills.
I want to be a cybersecurity specialist.
We hope to establish a software company where we solve problems.
So I think more people will share the passion, and empowered Africa will be able to rise up to the responsibility. I see things really good.
It's all about being able to use the resource that is available here in Africa. The students will innovate tomorrow and will change everything.